A more complete modern sports car than the 718 Cayman GT4 is hard to imagine. It looks great, it's got a wonderful engine, it's sublime to drive, it's brilliant in every way, except it's only a few £1,000s cheaper than a basic 911. And wouldn't you just rather have a 911?
Before we get into it, have you subscribed to the CarGurus YouTube channel yet? We post new and used car reviews, helping you work out which car is right for you. Go on, tap that subscribe button. This is the second Cayman GT4 in the series. The original version was so brilliant that Porsche hasn't messed with the recipe too much. Normally aspirated flat 6 now displaces 4 litres and develops 414 brake horsepower. There's more downforce now, but with no more drag, plus sharper styling. Today, it goes up against its big brother, the 911 Carrera. This is the entry point to the 911 range. It's bigger, heavier, and more luxurious than the GT4, and more like an everyday sports car than a weekend plaything.
But the most fundamental difference between the two cars is where their engines sit. You can't see it, but the Cayman is mid-engine, so the motor sits right around here, just ahead of the rear axle line, and that means this car has only 2 seats.
Its 4-litre engine delivers peak power at 7,600 RPM. Porsche quotes a 0 to 62 time of 4.4 seconds and a top speed of 188 miles per hour. The only gearbox option, for now at least, is a 6-speed manual.
The 911, of course, is rear engine. The motor sits way out here, far behind the rear axle, and that means that it does have 2 small seats in the rear, although you'll need children or very short friends to make use of them.
The 911 also has a flat 6, but it's smaller at 3 litres, and rather than being normally aspirated, it's got turbos. It doesn't rev quite as high, delivering peak power at 6,500 RPM. Power is rated at 380 brake horsepower, somewhat less than the GT4, but it has got lots more torque. 0 to 62 takes 4.2 seconds, and flat out, you're doing 182 miles per hour. This 911 uses the 8-speed PDK. What about price? The Cayman GT4 starts at £75,348, while the 911 Carrera is £7,500 more expensive at £82,793.
There are some things Porsche always seems to get right with car interiors, and seating position is one of them. The relationship between the steering wheel, the pedals, and the seat is inch perfect. Now, this might be a Porsche GT car, but it's not some stripped out road racer. You've still got sat-nav, a good stereo, you've got aircon, phone connectivity, all that convenient stuff that you could reasonably need.
This particular Cayman GT4 is fitted with the optional Club Sport package. It costs £2,778 and includes a roll cage, a fire extinguisher, and a harness for track use. It's also got full bucket seats, which cost £3,788. There are a few other toys, and outside you'll spot the carbon ceramic brakes, a £5,597 option. The total cost of this car is £94,506.
The 911 immediately feels bigger and airier, more spacious inside. This latest Porsche infotainment system is very good, really large screen, crisp graphics, an easy menu system. Again, you've got all the convenience and safety features you really need, but in a more opulent sort of cabin.
Electrically adjustable sport seats, 2-tone leather and parking cameras, plus bigger wheels and a sports exhaust, drag the price of this particular 911 Carrera up to £90,891. That means this 911 is actually £4,000 cheaper than the Cayman GT4.
It's often been the case with the 911 Carrera that less is more, that the cheaper, less powerful Carrera is a sweeter car to drive than the more expensive, faster Carrera S. Is that still true here? We'll come back to that later. In terms of the everyday stuff, driving through town, driving on the motorway, this 911 Carrera is imperious for a sports car. It's just so easy to use. It's comfortable, the ride quality is really good. You always get quite pronounced tyre roar on the motorway from a 911, and this one's no exception. But that aside, it's a really refined, civilized car. You could very happily potter about in this thing every day.
With its turbocharged engine and less highly strung character than the Cayman GT4, the 911 feels unremarkable at normal speeds.
You really do have to stretch the car's legs to unearth the driver's car in the 911 these days. But when you do that, it's just so impressive. Clearly the weather is disgusting today, it's chucking it down. But even in these conditions, you can appreciate how well sorted this 911 Carrera is. It feels so sweet to drive. The steering, brilliantly accurate, pin sharp. The body control is massive. It deals with a bumpy road so well. It's planted and secure even in these horrible conditions. It's such a well-connected sports car. You really do have an impression of what's going on underneath you. And for all those reasons, I actually find this Carrera preferable to the Carrera S. It's a more natural and intuitive sports car.
This particular test car doesn't have rear wheel steering or active anti-roll bars, and it's all the better for it. More natural, more intuitive.
All that turbocharged torque makes this car feel so brisk in a straight line. It really does give you a proper thump up the backside, and it's a properly good turbo engine as well. Throttle response is super sharp, almost feels normally aspirated in that respect. And then you've got this really linear power delivery all the way to the top end beyond 7,000 RPM. For a turbo engine, it's so sweet. I'm really looking forward to driving a new 992 with a manual gearbox. My left leg hasn't done anything for about half an hour. This PDK is technically very, very competent, smooth. It's very quick in manual mode when you're going for a bit of a blast. It's just lacking a little bit of involvement that a manual transmission would put back in.
The 911 is the definitive sports car all-rounder, but there are plenty of sports cars that are more focused than it, and therefore more thrilling to drive.
So, does the Cayman GT4 give you more of that sports car fizz in normal driving? Yes, it does, right away. It immediately feels like a much more edgy, hardcore kind of machine, which of course it is. But what it isn't is unbearable in normal driving. In fact, it's perfectly usable. Even on a grim day like today, this car's on fairly dicey tyres, Michelin Cup 2s, so they sometimes feel a little bit out of their comfort zone. But you can still use the car. It's perfectly safe, it's secure. The ride quality is really good. It doesn't beat you up. These optional seats do sit you up very upright, but you don't have to have them. Meanwhile, the gear shift isn't too heavy, the steering's not too heavy. This asks a little bit more of you in normal driving than the 911 does, but you could still use it day to day.
With no turbochargers but a higher redline, the Cayman GT4's engine is altogether more exciting. But there's a but.
There is just a vague sense that it's not quite the howling masterpiece it might have been. You can blame the petrol particulate filters that Porsche had to fit to make this engine emissions compliant on that. It's still a wonderful engine. It still howls. It's still got really dramatic and intense power delivery. It still revs lovely and high. But there's just this vague sense that it could have been more tuneful than it is. Meanwhile, gear shift, absolutely gorgeous. Such a lovely, direct and mechanical throw. It's just a shame that the gear ratios are so long. Do I need to be able to do 86 miles an hour in second?
The way the Cayman GT4's chassis copes with a tricky B-road needs to be felt to be believed.
Honestly, it's masterful. Porsche does that better than anybody else. The chassis on this car is blindingly good. There's such a sweet natural balance. There's really strong grip, especially in the dry. The steering is pin sharp and allows you to position the car with real accuracy. And then there's really good body control. There's great compliance over bumps. This car does it all, and the harder you push, the better it seems to become.
Of course, it was inevitable the 911 would be more adept at the everyday stuff and the Cayman GT4 more engaging on a quick run. So how do we choose a winner?
Here's the thing. The 911 is way more usable than the Cayman GT4, and the Cayman GT4 is way more exciting than the 911. But for me, when we're talking about sports cars, excitement trumps usability. It's a bigger deal. And that's why I'm going home this afternoon in the Cayman GT4. Thank you very much for watching. Please remember to comment below and subscribe to the CarGurus YouTube channel if you haven't already. And remember as well to head to cargurus.co.uk because that's where you'll find a great deal on your next used car from a top-rated dealer.